What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favali coming at you with the one, the only, the certified fantabulous himself, Mr. Mort Jensen of the NBA podcast fame, of OnlyFans celebrity, most importantly, of Yahoo Sports fame, and of Forbes fame as well. We are here we're penultimate. We've gone through every single team with our biggest question for each squad. We each trade off questions. We have 4 divisions in the books. We're going on to the Northwest Division, so we're going to talk Nuggets, Timberwolves, Blazers, Jazz, and Thunder. Maybe some Masai Ujiri talk at the end if anyone wants to stick around. Rumor has it he's not with the Raptors anymore. Go figure. Before we kind of belly flop in, Mort, how the heck are you?
Doing well. The draft is done, so that means that my 5 a.m. times are dead and buried until the start of next season, which I greatly appreciate.
I mean, that's always exciting.
It is.
As a reminder throughout this process, so like Mort does a pretty good job of like hitting the macro stuff, and then some of mine, after I see his questions, I try and zero in on some just micro questions, like more along lines of extensions or specific players or specific team needs. So we try to hit everything. Without further delay, though, let us begin. We go in alphabetical order. That means, what up, Denver? Mort, what's your question for these folks?
So how do they make upgrades? Because I think we can say with absolute certainty that they have a lot of players where their trade value is at best mediocre. They have a lot of money on the cap, so they can't just go out and spend. That's just not a viable option. And of course, another thing that's not a viable option is trading Nikola Jokic, because you don't want to do that. So the big question here is, how do they make upgrades? And I probably should have worded that better into like substantial upgrades. I'm not talking about like, hey, we get Bruce Brown back on some type of MLE deal. No, like another all-star player. Like, how do you get a legit secondary running mate to Nikola Jokic?
With their flexibility, I don't know how you would go and say, let's get the second best player on this team. I think that becomes super complicated. I more so look at it if you're going to make changes, it's kind of in the realm of, okay, what can the mini MLE get us this year? What I am sort of curious, and you could make trades. Like, that is, despite what Josh Kroenke says, which that whole press conference was bizarre. And I watched the full snippet of where the quotes were coming out of, because he, unprompted brings up trading Nikola Jokic, which is, he didn't need to do that. This is the design of the second apron, as it feels like owners, Josh Kroenke included, created this patsy. Like, they're using the second apron as cover for why things could go wrong, why they can't spend, why they can't make trades. This is what they wanted. They wanted excuses not to spend more so that they could blame it on the second apron to the fans. And it's, no, you pushed for this. And I'm not saying they need to dive into the second apron. It's super restrictive. But that doesn't mean you can't make trades. It doesn't mean that you can't search for upgrades. So I'm just sort of like, that whole press conference was cringy, because I'm not here for owners complaining or lamenting the limitations of the second apron when they are the ones who quite literally pushed for it.
Agreed.
What type of upgrade are you looking for them to make? So, like, if you have you're running the Nuggets, and we're trying to keep it somewhat plausible, like, you mentioned a number 2. Like, are you like what archetype, or are you like trying to get rid of Jamal Murray? Like, are you upgrading from Jamal Murray? What are you doing here?
I want to keep Jamal around. I do, because I do think the pick and roll between him and Jokic is a viable weapon, especially in the playoffs. But I would like someone else who can also create their own shot. I think you need one more dynamic scorer, and that's also part of the Jamal Murray question, because, he was a guy who I think you could have sort of penciled in between 20, 25 points every single night. Now he swings more than we thought he would in production. Like, he's not as consistent as he used to be. So I think you need someone who you can just kind of lock in as a permanent secondary, tertiary scorer, however you want to frame it. Now, the guy I want, I have a name here, and it will require Michael Porter Jr. going out, and I think you won't be surprised. The guy I want here is Zach LaVine. Now,
I was actually surprised it wasn't Kobe White.
No, see, Kobe White would be a very fun player to talk about because it's easier to trade for him with the $12.8 million cap hit, I think it is, that he has, compared to Levine, who's at 40 plus. But if we try to look at it through the prism also of age and whatnot, Levine would just be such he would be such a basketball sicko addition for the Nuggets. You know what I mean? Like, this dude works so hard. I think he's got a bad rep because people are so locked in on, the bad defense, which frankly isn't that bad anymore. The whole, he didn't win in Chicago. No shit. He was overtaxed in Chicago throughout his entire tenure there. That obviously doesn't work. He's never been paired with like an elite playmaker, unless we want to count the 35 games of Lonzo Ball in 2021. Alongside Nikola Jokic, who obviously is the number one option with a freaking bullet, Levine, who spent 3 years being one of the best off-ball scorers in the league, will just benefit so greatly from having this post presence who can just pass in a variety of ways, both near the rim, on the move, from outside the line. Like, Jokic can make every pass in the book. The great thing about it is Levine can catch them. He's a guy who can get into the transition. He can pop in half court situations. He can finish plays above the rim. It's catch and shoot, like everything under the sun. Offensively speaking, scoring wise at least, he's got very, very few weaknesses. And alongside Jokic, I would not be surprised if you just leveled Levine up a notch as well. So that's the guy who I really like. But I don't hate your Kobe White name whatsoever. It's a far more realistic and feasible option contractually speaking.
Yeah, because with Kobe White, you in theory don't have to give up Michael Porter Jr. You're using the Najee and Saric deals, and then you're including, all right, is one of the young players going out, or is there, you could trade one first-round pick this year in 2031 or 2032. They also have their 2032 second, which I assume will be used to wipe Dario Saric's salary off the books anyway, if past trends are any indication. But do you think that Zach LaVine ends up being enough of so you're going to get off Najee and or Saric in the process of that. But are you including a first round pick or a Peyton Watson to get Zach LaVine? Do you view him as enough of an upgrade for what the Nuggets need over Michael Porter Jr.? Because I do think what you said, you're onto something in the sense that I did come away from that Oklahoma City series specifically, or just their playoff run in general, thinking, okay, if Aaron Gordon is healthy, this team can punch above its weight on defense. And I found myself not concerned, but okay, they could use more dynamic optionality on that's, I think, using the same word twice, basically. They could use just a more dynamic option on offense, and that's certainly LaVine when you look at the off the dribble stuff specifically. But do you think he's enough of what they need, of that upgrade from MPJ, to where you're now you're attaching things on top of him, in part because, one, we don't know how other teams feel about the MPJ contract, but two, you have to include money that other teams don't want to make the math work.
Right. Well, I mean, look, first and foremost, you'd be trading with the Kings, and the Kings have proven to be an odd organization that occasionally takes packages in return that are under the perceived value of the player that's going out. So I think you need to bake that in. But in terms of what you need to add, I'm not saying you should add an unprotected first, for example. That, I think that would be egregious. This isn't Joe Dumars. So you would have to.
Well, the Kings even accept that, though. They
right?
Say no.
There are a couple teams that apparently said no to that, which is even worse. Somehow much worse.
Which is why the Bulls would turn down any Kobe White offer from the Nuggets that's built around like Peyton Watson and a first. Let's say if that's the cost.
Right, because the Bulls actually prefer to just lose him in 2026 free agency. Smart play. Great Bulls. Great job. No, but it's the compensation level is an interesting discussion, because is it Peyton Watson? Is it a protected first round pick that might be lottery protected for a year or maybe 2 years, and then
it can only be yeah, I guess so. They could do 21 and 2032 lotto protection before it just expires.
Right, or conveys or trade morphs into 2 seconds or whatever. You can sort of finagle that, and you can hackle it out. I don't think you should give up the farm to get Levine in there. Obviously, Michael Porter Jr. would be the main piece going out. It might have to be a 3-team trade as well, because would the Kings look at Michael Porter Jr. and go, "Oh yeah, he's a great fit with Keegan Murray. Now we have two of them." I don't know. I don't know if they like that dynamic. So maybe you have to look elsewhere. But Levine is definitely the guy who I think you're asking me if he moves the needle enough. I do think he does. I think the league at large has been way too low on Zach LaVine. I think fans at large have been way too low. I love him. I think he is severely underrated, especially as an offensive performer. I think people are like talking about how he's just a chucker, which like his efficiency has been proving that wrong for like what 5-6 seasons now. Mm-hmm. Like he is super efficient, and yet for some reason people have just kind of labeled him, you're not important. You're just a chucker. I overwhelmingly disagree with that notion.
I'm with you on your sentiment of Zach LaVine. I guess I get concerned with, if you're giving up Porter and then let's say 2 non-rotation players as part of the package, if there's a pick on it, so you're not necessarily hollowing out your rotation. At the same time, just the money with Zach LaVine, like to invest that in a singular player where he's more expensive than Porter Jr., that gets dicey, which is why I would prefer the Kobe White route, but I don't actually know if they have enough to get Kobe White. I might even prefer, like an Ayo Dosunmu Lonzo Ball combo just to stick with the Bulls. Probably not getting you enough individual dynamism offensively, but like those two do things that could help you on both defense and offense. There's also been, I don't know how I feel about this, like sort of floating around, let's go from Michael Porter Jr. to Cam Johnson's salary because he's cheaper. So you're just saving a bunch of money. I don't think you gain anything offensively from that, but you probably gain a little bit defensively, and then there's more flexibility. But I'm not, you're giving up your 1 first-round pick plus Michael Porter Jr. to get Cam Johnson. I guess it's a discussion, but that feels more of like a cost savings move without actually upgrading your roster, if that makes any sense.
Right, because I do think we need I don't know why I said we, the Nuggets need a shot creator as well. Is Cam Johnson a quote unquote shot creator? Is he someone you can ask when you really need to go get us a bucket? I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, the answer is no. That's just not
All
his
right.
game. Like, I just think that for the Nuggets, it would be, you're looking at Brooklyn's rosters. They're like anybody else that tickles your fan. I mean, probably not. First of all, they're all rookies. 5 of them are first-round picks at this point. So maybe it's a scenario where I think what would be more ideal for the Nuggets if they're trading any of their higher-priced guys is, can you turn them into 2 guys who deepen and extend your rotation is probably what I'd be looking at. The Levine scenario specifically is intriguing to me. And if you could find a way to consolidate just your bad contracts, attach enough to Najee and Saric, and you bring back a Kobe White, or I don't know who else would fall into that salary range, that gets interesting. Then we could have like a discussion. The Levine one just gives me pause because it feels like it makes them, you're playing your last trade chips essentially.
Yeah,
and then it
makes
them less flexible moving forward.
And I agree with that. I looked at this through the prism of the Nuggets also needed to get their 3-point attempts up as well. Like, one thing is the offensive dynamics that needs another like wheel turner, but the fact that they're also such a reluctant 3-point shot or a 3-point shooting team, that's where Levine just changes that. Like, he's got that quick trigger that I think would be extremely interesting. But again, like Kobe White too, I don't hate that option. Is there someone who isn't a former Bull we could look at?
Well, it's actually, so this one's kind of out there. And shout out to Danny Melton saying if Vivek turns Fox into MPJ or whatever it turns out to be, that would be hilarious. Phil Brown, call Joe Dumars about Trey Murphy for MPJ. I mean, Pelicans might do anything at this point. If you put a pick and maybe Peyton Watson on the table, and I don't know, maybe the Pelicans better not do it.
If you put a pick on the table, like only if it's from the Pelicans signed, apparently.
What about, this is not, it'd be a risk. But could there be some sort of construction where it's Michael Porter Jr. and maybe you don't even, and then one of the, let's say Zeke Naji or Dario Saric, since he's expiring, can you be the team that has Jalen Green and then you're getting like a Royce O'Neal as well? Does that do anything for you? Or is Jalen Green too much of a risk?
He
His deal
is
is
a
technically longer, but he's
yeah.
younger and probably higher upside still than Michael Porter Jr. for sure.
He is a risk. That said, he's playing next to Nikola Jokic, who makes virtually everyone better. But then I pause myself because I remember Green played significantly better when he did not play with Alperen Şengün. Would that be an issue going from Şengün to Jokic? Is he a guy who just needs to clear everyone out and can't play with the Nikola Jokic? Could you, by the way, would that be like cause to just like immediately to retire if you get worse by playing with Nikola Jokic? Does that just automatically qualify you for retirement? Like, okay, you're out of the league.
I can't see, I just can't see anyone being, maybe another big, the Nurkic stuff. Like, okay,
Right.
maybe you wouldn't be able to play alongside Jokic, but if you can't play alongside Jokic, there's a lot more questions. You could do something else with Phoenix, maybe. Like, what if it was Brooks and Grayson Allen and then a similar structure, like having Grayson Allen and Dylan Brooks? Like, you've extended your rotation. I don't think you've gotten any more dynamic offensively. You
No.
probably actually, you're juicier defensively with Dylan Brooks on the roster.
Yeah.
And Dylan Brooks thinks that he's dynamic offensively.
Right.
They reined
go
him in
go
Houston.
Kobe on it, Dylan Brooks in Denver. Yeah, that's not great. And then Grayson Allen does literally nothing for me at all. It's tough, right? There doesn't seem to be like that one guy. Well, I do think Zach LaVine is that guy, but you're absolutely right in pointing out the contractual element kind of stops him from being that guy, because is it even feasible to get him in without relinquishing too much?
Do you what about lower end, like a Jordan Clarkson or a Colin Sexton? Would either of those do?
Okay, I would like Sexton more than Jordan Clarkson.
What about, I don't know if he
yeah.
has enough juice left in the tank, but like a Chris Middleton from Washington?
Oh, that's why are you teasing him like that? The
Teasing
guy can. Chris Middleton, he can be on the floor for 20 minutes a game. That's not nice. Be nice to Chris Middleton. He's a good dude.
That's perfect for him then. That's
They need
basically
depth.
what you want to get off of what?
They need depth as well. They need reliable
they're not
depth.
consolidating. Doesn't Chris Middleton make less than MPJ this year? They're actually saving money. So
Yeah, well,
let's get into mine, because we have a question. We don't have a question, but don't tell Santa Cruz Jokic should turn down the extension and go to free agency. I actually think so. He's eligible for an extension. That's 3 years, $212.5 million. I do see people in the chat saying that Josh Kroenke basically already alluded to that they're not making trades. We saw the Josh Kroenke comments. We talked about them. I actually think what Nikola Jokic should do is not sign the extension. You can say that it's because, if he just waits a year, he can sign a 4-year extension and guarantee himself like 80 plus more $million as he's going into his 30s. Okay, great. I look at it as the Nuggets shouldn't need this reality check, but they clearly do, of his goodwill can't be assumed anymore. Like that, if I'm Jokic, that's what you have been, the lowest maintenance superstar in the league for basically a decade at this point. Steph is probably the only one who comes close to rivaling you there. You need to show a sign like, all right, this doesn't need to be, I want out. It's not a trade demand, but it's, no, you keep making the roster better. Otherwise, you will risk losing me, be it for a trade demand or down the line, or if they actually let him reach free agency, because he's the type of guy, similar to Giannis, similar to what happened with KD and OKC, or has happened to LeBron. They're good enough to where you, even if you're not sure if they're going to stay, if they don't ask for out, you almost have to keep them. You can be proactive and move them, but he is so generational that unless he asks for out, I don't know how you justify moving him. So I'm not signing the extension, Mort. If that money's always going to be there.
Agreed.
And if it doesn't put pressure on the organization to improve, then as Nikola Jokic, that's all the information that I need about my future in Denver. And so I don't think he should sign the extension, given the way that players tend to just sign extensions now. It wouldn't surprise me if he signed it, and he's very drama-free. However, I think that if you want this Nuggets regime to act, to do anything, to continue optimizing your time there, it's not, look, the Nuggets are a good team. They took the Thunder to 7 games.
Yeah.
The Thunder aren't going to get any easier to get past, though. So you need to continue getting better. And I think not signing the extension kind of sends the message, yeah, he might still stay, but it's not guaranteed. And that's the first time they'd have to reckon with anything like that.
I have a big-ass question for you.
Is this going to be about playing with Luka Doncic on the Lakers
Yes.
or something? I knew it.
It is about Luka. Yeah, absolutely. It is. And you know me too well. This is going to take guts. Would you be willing to trade Jamal and Michael Porter Jr. exclusively for expiring contracts and potentially draft compensation if you can get it? So you go into 2026 with the chance of just signing him outright in free agency.
If he doesn't sign an extension
Yeah.
with the Lakers this summer,
I should clarify. I forgot something. I should clarify. These trades shouldn't be now. They would be deadline trades. So you're closer to knowing where his mindset is.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would have to just the prospect of it. But I don't know. That's a really mega risk there. And
It is. That's why I'm asking. That's what but imagine it. You probably have the best card in the league to actually go get him. It's Nikola Jokic, his best buddy in the league, outside of Dorian Finney-Smith.
I think at that point, it's not a question of would you. It's just if you're doing that, it's because Nikola Jokic has told you that Luka Doncic is coming.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if they could even structure that, is having Aaron Gordon and Jokic on the books. They're even going to have the money to sign a Luka Doncic max contract still.
Well, let's see, right? It would be 90 million.
Honestly, if I had to guess,
Those
I'm
two?
not rooting for this. It feels like Nikola Jokic would be more likely to wind up on the Lakers than Luka Doncic is to end up on the Nuggets.
Like by a trade?
Or free agency. You could do the same thing and leave.
Yeah, but that's in 2 years.
Okay.
No. I'm just saying, in the immediate. Is he going to stick around for 2 years?
I know Luka is coming. Otherwise, I don't know how do you spin that to Jokic if you don't end up with Luka. That just becomes a massacre of talent shedding.
Could you imagine asking Nikola to tamper? Hey, could you give Luka a call? He's just going to look at you like you're stupid.
But yeah, so if you were Jokic, what do you think about that sentiment of not signing the extension because you know it'll always
I agree
be
with
for
it.
you just to
I agree with it. I think you're right. This team needs a wake-up call. It absolutely does. And you're right. They shouldn't. It's the best player in basketball. That should be motivation enough for you to start thinking outside the box. It shouldn't just be, the bottom line. Absolutely. No, I mean, if I'm Nikola Jokic, I'm asking some pretty big questions. I'm having the Domantas Sabonis sit-down meeting with the team going, guys, what the fuck's the plan? I'm having that meeting. I'm having 2 of them, 3 of them.
I will say, he came as close to, and he basically said that they need to get deeper in his exit press conference, or maybe it was immediately after the Game 7 loss to OKC. For him to even say that, just knowing he doesn't make those types of statements, I mean,
that was a bomb. That was a mic drop.
That was a mic drop, and it still just didn't resonate. I know the Nuggets' tools are limited, and we haven't actually gone through the offseason yet, but the messaging they're putting out there is just, if you're a Nuggets fan, it's pretty discouraging.
Yes.
We can move on, I think, to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Mort, what's your question for them?
Right. So what is the backup plan in case everything just goes haywire here? Julius Randle says bye-bye and Naz Reid does the same. Again, I don't think they will. It's very, very important for me to preface that. I don't think they will. But do they have a backup plan in place? Was the draft the backup plan? Just getting the big men in there and then just saying, all right, if we lose those 2, we have 2 very untested guys who can come in and take those minutes. I just want to know, do they have something in their back pocket if something goes awry?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. And the other question you could ask is because they were so heavily linked to the KD sweepstakes until it was clear that he really only wanted to play for Houston or San Antonio, felt like in the end. Are you still trying to pull off a bigger move like that? I guess there's no one available that would sort of fit that ilk. But yeah, I mean, you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker's a free agent. Naz Reid and Julius Randle have player options. And this, we can get into my question too, because it's similar. Is there any scenario more in which all 3 are back, and we did the math on the Timberwolves look ahead, they essentially need those three to make a combined like 55 to 60 million next year if they want to stay under the second apron and have, because if they want, they can keep all three of them. I just don't think they're going to be willing to go back
Right.
into the second apron. So I think the only way that it's really possible is let's just assume that Nickeil Alexander-Walker gets 15. You need to hope that Naz Reid opts in and you can extend him off that number so you're at 30. And then it's, okay, like, can Julius Randle either opt out and re-sign for 25 or 30? And, like, we're just at that number and figure it out. So I would think it's possible. $60 million, let's say, let's round up. Is that enough for those three players? I think in a vacuum, probably not.
No. How do you even ask that question with a straight face? Of course it's not.
Well, I just gave you the math. I think it all hinges on if you can get Naz Reid to opt in and extend him off that number.
But why would he? It's a 140% off of that number.
What do you
That's
think
not a lot.
It's not a lot, but so like it's ends up being what? Basically $20 million a year to start. So he gets a 4-year extension off that number.
He's about to enter his prime, right? And he's really, really good. There are teams out there, I have to assume, to a great extent, that are very interested in having him as a starter even. He's probably aware of that. His agents are probably aware of that. Like, his entire background team is probably aware of that. Like, what I'm really asking here, Dan, what's the carrot here? What is the carrot that makes him chase this?
So what you're saying is, and this is just, I'm ballparking it, opting in, and then it's a 4-year, $94.1 million extension. And so it's effectively a 5-year, $106 million deal.
Mm-hmm.
You believe that that's too far afield from his market?
So I think that would be a pretty decent deal for the Wolves. I wonder if Naz Reid looks at that and goes, I'm worth more, because I know that I have starting money offers elsewhere if they came to that. Like, I'm not saying it would be bad value, like, in a vacuum. Because, again, like, how many minutes is he really going to play on that roster when Rudy Gobert is still there? Randall presumably is still there. But perhaps that's another thing. Like I know Nas has this great relationship with Minnesota and the fans. And look, I love that. And if that continues, more power to it. That's great. Is he willing to sacrifice the bottom line to maintain all of that? If he is, that's awesome. Honestly, if he's like, yeah, I'll take that deal. I'll sign and stay, like, because 90 million is still 90 million. I would love that. That's great.
So I didn't even mean to interject. I'm wondering,
no, it's fine.
Just like, what is the team? Because we know that there's only one team that has the cap space to pay him that much. But what is the team that would, like, so they would engage in a sign and trade to give him the deal?
No, sorry. I think I would be looking at next year. You were talking about an extension. I think
if you were him, you might opt in. Or maybe sign a 1+1 just worth more, and then to go into free agency next year?
Perhaps, yes. Like, opt in and then just look at next year. It's beyond this season. I'm looking for Naz Reid specifically. Like, I do think there's a fair chance that he might opt in just for this year. It's the extension part I question.
I just don't know why. Man, if he opts in just to explore free agency, that would be wild, but it would speak to what the market is. If the Nets don't have interest, he's only getting mid-level money from somebody else unless it is a sign and trade. I do wonder, as Danny Menton says in the chat, Wendy hinted that Nah would be the only one to leave. That does make sense just because they have no, like, sort of team control over him. Also, Fisher mentioned that the Hawks, who are having a terrific offseason so far, adds him to the Pelicans for that. They mentioned them as a sign and trade partner for Minnesota. They have that huge DeJounte Murray trade exception. It's like $25.3 million. So they could pay, Nah could get more than the mid-level. And the Hawks have, like, depending on game, they're like $20 million under the tax. So they could go into the tax, but we know they won't. So they could pay Nah. So I would agree that he feels like the most likely one to leave.
Right. And then you have money. Then you have enough money to keep the two of them.
You have to keep Randall and Nas, but it just feels like you've still lost. I think, and the thing with Alexander Walker is, in theory, between Jalen Clark and also with Terrence Shannon Jr., you probably have the ability to place, in theory, more of what Nickeil Alexander Walker does than if you lose Julius Randle or Naz Reid. I do, but, like, if you have Randle and Gobert, do you think, like, could it make sense if let's just say, like, what if Brooklyn was interested in Naz? Is there a sign and trade that gets you Cam Johnson, and then maybe you're signing a big off the bargain bin to kind of back up Rudy Gobert, or trying out Leonard Miller a little bit more next year, or maybe even just, trying Julius at the 5 a little bit if you think you have the perimeter defenders for it. Who do you view, I guess my question would be, who do you view as like the most mission critical of these three to Minnesota?
Probably Randall, based on how he played this year and how he broke his playoff curse a little bit.
Right.
We needed to see that from him, because if he had crapped the bed again in the playoffs, he wouldn't even be on my radar as someone who was interesting to retain. Honestly, I would just have spent the money on Nas and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and I just kind of would have made Randall a bit of an afterthought. Like, yeah, you can stick around, but it's going to be on our terms. Randall, I think, really silenced a lot of critics, myself included, because I was a heavy skeptic. You know this, not just with his play in the playoffs, but over the course of the regular season, he displayed on several occasions the ability to scale back, which he didn't really show in New York all that well, but he kind of let Ant be Ant. He made sure that Jaden McDaniels, when he started becoming more aggressive as the year went on, he would like, oh, okay, let's empower that. Let's make sure we get you the ball. Like, he became a much more willing passer, like sought out Jaden a fair bunch. So, like, I think he's become so important to their DNA, which is not something I thought I'd be sitting here to say like 12 months ago. I never thought I'd say this. So if you're asking me, gun to my head, who would I like have to pick among the three? It's got to be Randall, and I say that as someone who loves Nas Reed.
I think you're right. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is clearly the least valuable of the three, especially because like he shot the ball well this year, but that could be shaky. And also, I think, when the Kevin Durant boogeyman was still sort of floating around out there, you had the idea of, oh, we could get like an upgrade as a second option off of Julius Randle. Now it's just like, I don't know what player would be feasibly available that you could consider an upgrade from that spot, that then the
Right.
Timberwolves also have the assets necessary to go get him. Like, they can't offer the Desmond Bane special. They don't have those assets that they're like, okay, DiVincenzo and Dillingham and salary, that can get semi interesting, but like that gets you in the like, does that get you in the Levine conversation? Like, you could do something like that if you're the Kings. I don't know why they would want Julius Randle though. So then it's, what is the matching salary to make that work? They should not be a Jalen Green team, that's for sure. They shouldn't be a Bradley Beal team. There's just no names that kind of really stand out to me.
Right.
And so it feels like you have to bring back Julius Randle. Like, he has to be your top priority.
At what point do you think the Wolves sit down, look each other in the eyes and go, we need to be younger and get younger for the sake of Ant?
I don't know. I don't think they're trending in that direction just based off their interest in KD. If anything, it kind of like implies the opposite, that it feels like to me they're more likely to go make another consolidation trade or take a bigger swing, and maybe deplete their assets even further than they are to say, hey, we're going to trade Rudy Gobert, because I think that would be sort of the harbinger of, oh, they're trying to get younger. If Rudy Gobert was probably on the table in Kevin Durant trade talks, what's the player that would make sense to do that again? And I think it could have even been, if you're bringing back Nas Reed, that still would have been a debate as to how good can your defense be without Julius Randle. So, and again, that name just doesn't pop off the page to me. And so I think this team, I believe, will largely look the same, but it also just, it doesn't feel like it's enough just yet. Like, the offense specifically can still be quite sloggy, especially when you get to the postseason.
I'm just not a fan of that approach where, oh yeah, we'll deplete our assets like year after year to optimize our product when that product clearly is still lacking like another foundational piece.
But you just kind of said the opposite about the Denver Nuggets, though.
It's Nikola Jokic.
So you're saying that you don't believe Anthony Edwards can be the best player on a title team then?
I'm saying he will need more help than what Nikola Jokic will need, because I think the disparity between them is pretty significant. I'm not saying Ant can't be the best player on a title team. I'm saying he's going to need more help.
I think that's fair, but the Timberwolves, in theory, just between Dillingham and DiVincenzo and even Gobert, like, they have trade assets, like, at least in terms of player equity, that the Nuggets do not. I don't think any teams I guess if the Nuggets are willing to include Christian Brown, which it doesn't seem like they would be, but like Peyton Watson's probably going to be pretty meh viewed outside of Denver. The Jamal Murray contract is going to scare teams away from him. The Aaron Gordon just always being banged up, and maybe his contract, that's going to scare a few teams off. So I think that the Wolves, it's totally fair to say that Nikola Jokic is way better than Anthony Edwards. I don't have an argument against that. I just think that it feels counterintuitive to say the Nuggets, who are asset strapped, need to continue going all in. And I know Edwards is younger, so I guess that would be the crux of your point, that it makes more sense to go into this sort of rebuilding process. But you just made consecutive Western Conference Finals appearances. It feels weird to not try and push the bill when you are. It feels like, yeah, they're flawed, but they've still gotten pretty close in each of the past 2 years.
You just said the right word, the bill, because the bill will come due eventually. Like if you then keep going older and older and older, suddenly those older players, their trade value will depreciate. They will go away, and eventually you could risk finding yourselves in like a Buck situation where you have very few picks at your disposal. You have very few tradable assets, where most of your core around your main guy has sort of aged out a bit. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do that, because then Anthony Edwards is going to look at that situation, at some point and go, is this the best option for me? Is this where I want to be? Is this does this make sense for me to continue that relationship, to continue that working environment? I understand your point though. Like I understand, because they're so close, quote unquote, like pushing the speeder right now makes sense. I don't mind doing it for a year or two, but like if Gobert's still on the roster at 35, and let's just be honest about this, he didn't exactly look great this year. I thought we saw a noticeable, not decline, that's a harsh word, but I thought we saw him regress a little bit. And if that pattern is to continue, that's not great in 2 years. Like Julius Randle, 31 as well, like that. He's not going to get younger. There are a lot of these players who are on the older side, who I think you can be realistic about and say they're going to get much worse over the next year or two. Eventually, you're going to have to look at that roster and you're going to ask yourself, what kind of foundation have we actually built with Anthony Edwards, or is he our entire foundation? Because if so, that's not always a good thing.
I think the issue, though, is what's the point of going or even entertaining the route that you're throwing out there when you don't have control over your own first-round pick until like 2030?
Yeah, that's fair. That is very fair. You're right. And that might be why that is clearly why they're going about this the way that they are. I just don't think it's a feasible long-term plan down the line. Like, do I mind if they go chase the title this coming season? No, because they don't really have a whole lot of options right now. But I do think eventually you're going to look at that roster. It's going to get significantly worse. It's only Edwards that's really on the upwards trajectory, depending on what happens with Rob Dillingham. We haven't seen enough of Rob to like really make an educated opinion on him. If he comes out just hooping like next season, I'm so much more relaxed about this team. If he's like, an high-end full-time starter,
Shannon is able to play real minutes throughout the season.
Yeah, if he becomes a fully fledged rotational piece and Dillingham becomes a high-end starter, I'm going to exhale.
I sort of wonder if they need to trial by fire Rob Dillingham, and can you trade? It'd have to be another team involved, but trade Mike Conley to Boston for Sam Hauser or something. This is Boston's looking to save money, and Sam Hauser can come in and fill that shooting role. And now it's okay. Rob Dillingham needs to be the second quarterback or the third quarterback with Julius Randle as the offense. That's super risky, but I think that's sort of the key, and it's probably why, to put a bow on the Timberwolves, the smartest course of action is, if you're not going to pay the second apron, keep as many of the guys as you can of those three. They're all important, and we have our rankings. It's Randall, it's Nas, and then it's Nah. And then you kind of sit on everything else until the trade deadline. You see where you're at. Maybe someone shakes loose that makes sense to go after, and you can use Nas or Randall or some of your other salaries. There's DiVincenzo and Dillingham still. Or maybe Dillingham pops, and it's just, okay, that's the kind of, the break that they need. Because, look, Kevin Durant would have been interesting. Even if you had to give up Rudy Gobert, I just don't know what other name one could shake loose, and then two, all right, the Minnesota Timberwolves are within the realm of assets to where even if they don't have the best offer, like it's competitive enough for a team to accept it.
Right.
Our next team, the thing with this team is they have so many needs. One of the worst teams in the league. I just don't know when are they going to be done rebuilding. And imagine how many championships they might win. If they can win a championship while rebuilding, imagine how many they can win when they stop.
Well, I mean, look, we can sit here and compliment them up the wazoo, but fact is they still have needs. We talked about this. Like, it's so important for them to get into this season, or sorry, this summer, and not rest on their laurels. Like, they have to be active. We identified over the course of the playoffs, at least, that they needed a little bit more offensive juice. I don't remember. You presented a stat to me where I think their offensive ranking dropped by 7.2 points per 100 possessions in the playoffs compared to the regular season, somewhere along those lines.
One. Yeah.
Well, half court. That was the half court. My apologies. Right, but still, that's a substantial drop. And I do think their, at times, reluctance to take three-pointers can be something that's it's an area they can optimize in a better way than they are right now. So I do think they need to go out and identify a floor spacer. Is it the Duncan Robinson type, like who can only or primarily only do that? Does it need to be someone? I'm going to bring him up again, Kobe White. You actually brought him up for the first time on this one, but like Kobe White, is he the type of guy you need to bring into that organization who can play on ball, off ball? I don't know the name, but they still need a shooter. So who?
The name is Trey Murphy for this team would be just, I think that's like the single best fit. And I know he's not available in New Orleans, but the Thunder.
Are we sure? Joe Dumars might differ.
Also, even if he's not, the Thunder have, create your own trade market assets.
Right.
Like if they want somebody, they could just go trade for them. I mean, the names that are going to throw out there, it's Cam Johnson. It has to be someone good, like who's better than Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins in a vacuum, because you want them to have a chance at least of closing games. Otherwise, it's sort of, what's the point? It might help you eat some innings during the regular season, which is important, but like their offense, I think, got sloggiest in the playoffs. So, and I think it's, I don't think, like Sam Presti understands the timeline they're on now. He's trying to keep this thing going for as long as possible. They want to be dynastic, if not an outright dynasty. But this isn't him 2 years ago, not, kind of waiting and seeing how good the Thunder might be. He knows now. They just won the championship. And so I would expect them to go get somebody. It's just a matter of the name. And I think, like you said, the Kobe White, it's intriguing, especially just the salary so easy. They could basically just trade Ousmane Dieng for Kobe White plus picks. And so it's you've given up 0 rotation players, nobody who's getting a statue like a Kenrich Williams or a big Jalen Williams. That would just be insane. But you probably want someone who's like 6'6" or taller, because that gives them a better, like, you're not, I guess they could. Mark Daigneault's
that's mean to Kobe. 6'5" Kobe White is just like, how dare you, man? How dare you? 1 inch? I got the inch on my hair. What are you doing to me?
I guess I'll say it this way. You want someone who could play like a wing spot more consistently.
I agree.
Scale up. Because what are the odds of, like, they're never closing a game. I guess they would. Like I said, Mark Daigneault's a sicko. Are they ever closing a game with Kobe White, Alex Caruso, J-Dub, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? I guess they could.
They probably are. They probably are. But I hear you, like, because your Trey Murphy point is also great from a contractual perspective. Like, what that contract is going to be. You don't know what Kobe White's contract is going to be. So I think that's a fair point of view.
The Cam Johnson, he's featured on the YouTube image. That's the name that everybody throws out, and he does like kind of make a bunch of sense there, because he doesn't. With Kobe White, you're going to want to make sure you get him on ball touches. Where I think their offense could use an element of that, but maybe not too much when you have J-Dub and Shai. And, of course, you want the games of not just Chet Holmgren to expand, but like Nikola Topic will probably be a rotation player next season for them. So that's why Cam Johnson's probably intriguing. We went through a bunch of names when we were talking about them the other day. Is there anyone else that still sort of just stands out to you as this would be like an excellent fit? Like Duncan Robinson is fine, but he's not cracking. He's not even like in the top 7 of their playoff rotation, I don't think.
You know what would be a really sicko thing? We're sitting here talking about Kobe White versus Trey Murphy. What if Sam Presti goes in and says Trey Murphy and Kobe White?
Yeah, white shoes.
White shoes.
then you just like, I mean, they could do that now without having to give up like any core players, but that's not sustainable moving forward.
It might not be sustainable, but like if you could do that, like you probably stand. I don't even know the percentages, so I'm not going to say that, but like that would be such an almost shoe-in for the championship next season. It's insane. Like, and then you basically say, look, even if Kobe leaves us in free agency, we might just win a secondary title off of his help as well. I'd do that.
I mean, you probably have to, but I mean, like, what's the cost of getting them both? It's just that would be insane. That's
it's you're negotiating against Arturas Karnisovas and Joe Dumars. It could not be better.
Do any of the free
agents? The Bulls wouldn't even want a pick back. They want cash. Sorry.
I guess my whole thing is like, what is the actual cost of? Because you mentioned what does Kobe White's next contract look like? So if you're viewing him as a rental, the cost needs to align with that. Whereas like we said, Trey Murphy's under contract for a while. These players aren't big enough, but do any of like the free agent snipers, those dead-eye shooters like Gary Trent Jr. or Malik Beasley, constitute upgrades for them from the
Beasley? Yes.
Aaron Wiggins button. You think?
I would love Beasley on this team. I really would. I think that would be a great addition. And if they sign him outright and thus don't have to relinquish any like trade assets, they maintain their draft pick flexibility. Good Lord. I mean,
that would be insane. Bogdanovich kind of has the size, but he's older.
He's older.
Much to get him. I don't know what I want to send out to get him though.
Just to wrap up on the Kobe White thing, are we sure if he wins a title that he's not going to be willing? Like he just spent
We're
the
sure
first.
He hasn't gotten paid. There's no way he's taking like a discount.
That's true. Yeah, that's really fair. I see. My thing is, he would probably say, I just spent my entire career with the Bulls, not winning a championship. Like, let me just stick here because that's the best place for me. Like, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. Would Sam Hauser make sense for this team? I'm trying to just run through some names here.
I feel like Sam Hauser makes some sort of sense on every team.
But is he good enough to make sense? This team is so good that you need to make a lot of sense on this team.
Yeah, no. I mean, if you were looking at, as you said, someone who can finish games, no. I mean, then the forward floor spacing threat has to be Trey Murphy.
I will say, you did not like this name last time, but I still think Derek White could fit the
bill
too.
No, I said I wouldn't mind. I just didn't find it that creative. I thought you'd say another name.
If they were kind of looking to, or maybe you just get both of them, let's throw Kobe White back in here. If you were looking to, okay, this guy's not going to play a ton, but when we need him, we could push the button. Lonzo Ball on this team would also be absurd. Maybe get him and Kobe White.
I thought you would say Grayson Allen before. I was about ready to just smack you upside the head.
Like I would,
through the
especially
screen.
with the contract. Like, why wouldn't you prefer Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins?
Exactly.
They need to be, and that's what's challenging. Is this team is already so good, it feels like they have a clear flaw. But because I think that you don't want the player who fills it to be too small necessarily, you're now finding like a very specific archetype of player, one that everyone, and yes, you can outbid everyone for them, but you're also trying to fit them into your future salary structure as well, which is where the challenge starts to kick in.
I think, look, just going back to this idea of getting both Trey Murphy and Kobe White, I just wouldn't care about like the immediate future. Look, I talked myself into this now. I can tell.
I get you latching on to Kobe White, but we have just like Trey Murphy's probably the single most untouchable player in New Orleans, and they just traded their own draft pick, or they don't have a draft pick next year, so they have no incentive to give up Trey Murphy unless they're just batshit insane around those parts. So
I don't think that can be ruled out, sir.
I think the thing that we can rule out is I don't believe the Thunder would give up what it would take to get the Pelicans to part with him. That would be very un-Thunder-like to me.
Look, again, that depends on how Joe Dumars values Trey Murphy. We have no clue. We have no idea.
You're latching onto it is my point, and that feels like sort of like just pure fiction for you to latch onto. I know this is all theoretical, but of every name we've mentioned, who is the least likely to be moved this offseason?
Sir, I thought you and I agreed about a month ago that there's nothing fictitious about the Thunder and their trade assets. We agreed that they can create a market for virtually everyone.
they've never acted like it, though. Like, they're
No,
not
I
just going
know.
to go to New Orleans and say, hey, here's 5 first-round picks.
I mean, look, Sam
They
Presti
could.
before.
I'm saying they won't.
Okay, but I'm just saying Sam Presti 12 months ago was like, ho hum, we're still just like building. Now they want a freaking ship. Like, maybe now is the time for him to say, okay, it's time. Who knows? I'm just not ruling anything
I
out.
can get behind it. You seem unwilling to talk about anyone else now. That's
Okay,
the problem.
that's fair. Okay, you know what? Okay, that is fair. Let's talk about someone else because it does have to be a shooter, right? It has to be someone.
We kind of just went through
That's the thing.
Anthony
There aren't
Simons for a year could get interesting, but again, it's like
so
as a
expensive.
rental and also small. Like we just
Small,
said, 6'6" or
yeah.
taller. Like you go the Kobe White route at that point. Sam
Like,
Hauser
and-
feels like
right.
the worst player that could make where it's maybe he would play over Wiggins and Isaiah Joe, right? Doesn't he kind of feel like the worst player you can name in this? Because
Right.
now if you pull the Thunder internally, they might say the worst player who fits that bill is Cam Johnson, which is a testament to who the Thunder are right now in itself.
We also talked about another player as well in regards to them, and we weren't super high on it, but Jabari Smith Jr. I just don't think the Rockets after the KD trade are like super incentivized to go out and make drastic changes to their team.
Do you think he does enough of what they need?
We haven't seen the high volume, so that's a really fair question.
Well, here's
But
a question because I know you love this player, and we know he's available per Kelly Iko of The Athletic. Cam Whitmore. Would you
Yeah.
rather, if you're the Thunder, roll the dice on what Cam Whitmore could do or what Jabari Smith could do?
No, if Cam Whitmore is, which I don't
First
get
of all, if
that
the
he's
Rockets
available.
trade either one of these guys to the Thunder, I want someone fired immediately.
Right. And also, I just don't understand why he'd be available, Cam Whitmore, especially now that Jalen Green is gone. If he's available, yeah, like, absolutely. 6'7", high volume, super explosive, only at what, like $3.5 million
For the
this
next 2
year?
years. He's only 2 years into his rookie scale.
Right, exactly. So he's got another year left after this. He can play the off guard. He can play the 3. Like, he's big, physical, strong. Yeah, I absolutely he would help them.
He just feels like more of a dice roll. And when you're at this level, the Thunder can afford to have a dice roll, but you also kind of want a certainty. But you talk about fitting into their salary structure, like you're kicking McCann 2 years down the road. And again, that's a matter of you don't have the roster space to give up nobody, but you could do something like Dylan Jones for Cam Whitmore, like Dylan Jones and a pick for Cam Whitmore, and it would just work. So that would be very Thunder-esque to me. To where we got someone who maybe checks the box, but maybe he doesn't, but he's just so cheap that we're going to try it anyway.
Yeah. I don't care, though. I want Kobe White and Trey Murphy now. I'm latching on to that idea. I'm never letting it go, and I'll be forever disappointed in Sam Presti if he doesn't pull it off.
Generational Hater says Cam Whitmore's not available. I just disagree. Cam Whitmore's not untouchable. Just because they didn't send him to the Suns for a soon-to-be 37-year-old and expiring contract does not mean he's unavailable. How's that for generational hating? So my question here, Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams are both extension eligible. It's the rookie scale, so it's the 5-year max would run 246.7. There could be escalation language to $296 million if one of them makes, like, they could put the All-NBA special language in there. My question is, and I think this is a short one, like, what do their extensions look like? Do we just pencil in? Let's start with J-Dub. I would kind of just pencil him in for the 5-year, escalation special, where it's the max, but it can be even higher, is where I'd be at with him. My question would be, does he get a player option? It seems like we're seeing player options at the end of these deals, fewer and further between. So let's start with J-Dub. What do you think that ends up looking like?
Full max, whatever you want. Take it. Here you go.
So the 5-year special with probably, do you think he'll get a player option?
Oh, why not? If that's what he wants, just all the bells and whistles. Go nuts.
My guess would be he's not going to get one. I don't know if he'll ask for one, but I just don't think he's going to. This team is so together. I'd be kind of surprised if he has a player option at the end of that deal.
It's only a win for the Thunder if he doesn't. So cool. But I mean, look, I'm not worried about it if I'm the Thunder. He's that good. Like, if he wants to opt out a little bit earlier to go seek a bigger contract,
yeah,
I'll pay it.
Chet Holmgren. A little bit more. Are you giving him we already talked about whether you thought he was a no-brainer max, and you think that they should maybe negotiate a little bit.
I think the word I used was haggle, and I still do think that. 114 games in his career in the regular season, didn't exactly set the world on fire in the playoffs. Like, is he a crucial foundation piece for the Thunder? Absolutely. Did he just come off a serious injury in those 50 games missed this year? And was there probably something that still affected him during that playoff run? I can't rule that out. But if I'm the Thunder, I also just have to deal in the facts, and that is that his production wasn't at a level that I expected. He hasn't been entirely available over the first 3 years of his career. And those are things that I'm going to have to use, quote unquote, against him in an extension chatter. Like, I'm okay with him going out in the restricted free agency like next year and creating his own market. He probably will. It'll probably be a max. But if he's worth it, I have no issues like matching that. But if I can get him for cheaper, I wouldn't hate it. I think the solution that I brought up to you was the fun max to start, and then just a flat rate from what the fun max starts out at and in 26-27. So like that, the 25% of the salary cap number for 2026, 2027, and then just that number repeated for 4 years.
For 4 years, you said? So I think that's
a
like
4-year deal.
His max is like what? I think it's the 42.8. I'm just going to eyeball this. So over 4 years, that's 4 years and 171, basically. I think
it's low. I get it.
I think he's going to end up getting the max. And I think I feel more confident saying he probably won't get a player option more so than J-Dub, unless the outcome to all this is that he signs a shorter deal, and then maybe they give him a player option on that.
But we both agree who's the most important one to retain here, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's J-Dub, and neither of them are going anywhere. I'm just curious to see what the extensions look like. I think the only real point of potential division would be with Chet. It's like you said, do you haggle over anything? Maybe it is the full boat, but are there injury, like games played protections in there for the Thunder? I don't know, but they just won a title, so this is like the perfect time for him to sign an extension. The vibes are good.
Right, the vibes are good. Yeah.
So he will get it. He's the only, like, of the two. I'm just sort of like, I'm curious to see what that might end up looking like. We move on.
I agree.
To...
Okay. Oh, I would just want to say I agree. I just think there is a world wherein we might be getting a little too ahead of ourselves with Chet. I love him, though. Like, I see the upside, but it is what it is. It's upside. Like, his current production, I don't think it's worth a max right now.
We haven't talked about at length anyway the Drew Holiday trade before getting into the Blazers.
We have not.
What did you make of that? Giving up Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks for Drew Holiday.
I was surprised. I was surprised that it was the Blazers who attached assets to that trade. I did not think that Drew had that trade value. Apparently he did. That shocked me because I thought several teams would look at his age, look at his deal, and just go, yeah, you know what? Let's try to squeeze the Celtics for a couple seconds, a first, or whatever, if we want to take that on. For the Blazers to actively want him as a contract, that surprised me. It really did. But, I mean, look, there are benefits to this. Is this possibly the best mentor possible to Scoot Henderson? Yeah. Does his presence also allow Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe to be the primary shot to, well, Denny Avdija as well. Like, those three, are they going to get empowered now to take more shots with Simons out of the way? Absolutely. So there is an element of trial by fire here as well by bringing in Drew, which I actually like. But the deal itself, I thought, probably could have avoided the second rounders at the very least, and perhaps even squeezed out a couple seconds from Boston. Is that going to turn it into an outright shitty deal? No. But it's like some of those smaller things that annoy me.
I think it's debatable as to whether they should have done it. I was surprised that the reaction was so WTF, what's going on in Portland. I just view it as, the contract is the contract. If you want him for next year, it's all of a sudden a 2-year deal, and that can be easily moved. And you always need to send out money in trades. We very rarely see trades where it's pure cap space. Yeah, right. Portland could have maybe hoarded cap space, but you're always going to need matching money. Again, I was surprised that they were the team that had to attach picks here, even just straight up. I think like that would have made more sense to me. With all that said, I would agree and echo everything you yourself say. I think what gets my two questions are, like, what does this do to the hierarchy? And this will tap into my question itself. What does this do to the hierarchy on the team? Because you have Shaedon Sharpe, Scoot Henderson, Tamani Kamara, Denny Avdia, Jeremy Grant. Like, who is starting from that group? And I know that it might not matter who starts. Okay, what's your closing lineup? And so there are a lot of just players that have the profile or the equity invested in them when you look at where they're drafted, to where it'd be very weird if all of a sudden Scoot is quote-unquote still. I know he started games last year coming off the bench. Or if it's Shaedon Sharpe all of a sudden doing that. And then my other question there, and this is the actual question, is it does seem like they view themselves as being relevant next season, which is fine. That defense was already feisty. It's going to become, just like an inferno of disruption and stability now that Jrue Holiday is there. You have to get more shooting in here. This stat, when you hear it, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But it's also kind of jarring. Last year, among all non-Anthony Simons players on the Blazers, they ranked in the 7th percentile of catch-and-shoot three-point shot making, the 8th percentile of overall three-point shot making, and the 27th percentile of off-ball gravity. So, now you're getting a peek into, okay, Anthony Simons might not have been as efficient as he was last year, but he took the kinds of shots, forced the type of defensive attention that made the offense, I don't even think you could call it tenable, but it made it better, made it more of an NBA offense. That is gone. That's just gone. And Jrue Holiday is not replacing that. I know Tamani Kamara shot the ball well from three. Denny Avdia has seen his percentage tick up. They need, either Shaedon Sharpe needs to pop as just this jump shooter, or I would still say, even if he does pop, you need to go out there and get preferably someone who's bigger than Simons was, but you need to go get an Anthony Simons replacement.
Are we about to have a Trey Murphy discussion again? Because I can't. I just can't.
Well, you know what's interesting? It's not Trey Murphy specifically. This team has now shown in consecutive off seasons that they will go against the grain with their trades, to where they give up future draft picks for Denny Avdia last year, and now they just traded for mid-30s Jrue Holiday with 3 years and $100+ million left on his deal. So if you told me that they went out and traded a first-round pick to get a higher-end shooter in here, it just wouldn't shock me. And also, I think they really need it.
When you were talking about the offensive pecking order, was your omission of DeAndre Ayton intentional, or is he stuck on the ice trying to get to the game?
Well, he's not going to give you floor space. At this point, isn't Jan Henson going to give you more floor spacing the
I guess
guys on your roster?
No, but you're right.
The other thing is you have all these bigs now. I don't have a problem. By the way, people slamming that pick, we don't know what he's going to turn into yet. You can acknowledge it was a risk, it was a reach. They moved back to do it. I also support, because they have a million bigs, but the other thing that's weird about the Blazers, Mort, and this encompasses everybody on the roster, as promising as they might be, is there anyone that they currently employ that is good enough, that you are so sure is good enough, that it's going to deter you from drafting or acquiring a player at any given position?
No. Nope.
And so, I just don't. I didn't understand the outrage over that pick, is all. But they do have a trillion bigs, so it's just they need that type. They could use a Sam Hauser. Why was there not a way to fit him into that deal? Could they have done something like that? But could they be a Cam Johnson team? You did throw Trey Murphy out there. I just don't think they give up enough to get him. But
I was kidding, but yes, I just didn't want to have that conversation all over again. But no, you're right. He would be a better fit
Kobe
there.
White. Come on, let's go.
Right, exactly. Kobe White would make sense. So it's a weird roster, right? So Aiden, we know, solid defensive player, good rebounder, strong and serious scorer when he's motivated, but obviously not worth his salary at this point. Jeremy Grant is, to me, what is he doing on that roster at that age? And, he doesn't really help them from the outside. Yeah, he's got some volume to it, but that's more or less it. Defensively, fine, or actually outright good, but is he that good that you can't really replace him internally with more minutes to Donovan Clingan and an improved role to Kamara or something? Not necessarily. You're right. There are a lot of replaceable players on this team, which I think in a way is also encouraging when you looked at how they wrapped up the season. In a way, like they found their footing, and then you still have players who you're like, ho hum, do they really have a role here? That's sort of a win in and of itself. I just don't know what the market is for some of these players. Like if they're trying to pivot away from Aiden, what's that deal?
If you're willing to take on money, that's semi-interesting.
Right, but like, do you want to take on money? If you feel as though you can be competitive within long, don't you then want to optimize that salary spot in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, that's a good point. I was wondering if the Nuggets, I think, get worse here. Is there some sort of like Jeremy Grant, Michael Porter Jr. structure? Because Michael Porter Jr. would make a lot of sense. Deal is shorter.
I like that. But Jeremy Grant did not like, at least at the tail end of his stay in Denver, he didn't like being there because he thought he was just such an afterthought offensively. Do you sell him on, hey, you know what? Given the current structure of the team, go right ahead and average 20. Like, do you make that pitch to him if you're the Nuggets?
Well, I think also that was before he had been paid, and now he's been paid twice. And so he just might be at a different point in his career where contention might matter more, especially since he's on that. And also, you know, with Michael Porter Jr. coming out, there is going to be some sort of a like scoring vacuum there. I don't, you know, he's probably a little bit better still as an on-ball scorer, but as a shooter, like that's a downgrade for Denver. So we're sitting here telling them they should go out after shooters. That's a downgrade there. But like that's sort of the type of player they need. I don't view the Grant deal as, I guess, as toxic as you do. What is it, like 3 years and 102 or 104 million left on?
Okay, so toxic is probably, if I use that word, I want to take that back. That's probably a bad word on my part if I've used that before. I'm just slightly nervous when a guy suddenly drops almost 10 percentage points in terms of his efficiency, drops 7 points per game, well, more or less playing the same minutes, and just looking all types of bent out of shape offensively from one year to the other. Am I panicking a little bit about the Jeremy Grant situation in Portland? Yes. Admittedly, I am. Maybe there's a bounce back year there.
I think a lot of it, too. I think it's fair to be worried, but I think the two things that we probably don't talk about enough is the ecosystem around him, where there wasn't good spacing for anybody.
Right.
Just basically. And then the other thing is, like, what does it say? Like, the pecking order was kind of just, like, shifting before him there. When you're, like, now Denny Avdia is involved, and you have Scoot, and you have Tamani Kamara and Shane Sharp doing a little bit more. So I think that, one, your playing time gets impacted. I guess his didn't get dramatically impacted by it. But I think just the functionality of him. So maybe going somewhere where the role won't change as much because it's a team that's more focused on the immediate or has a very clear-cut role for him, where Portland, you know, we're talking, like, we're mentioning about who's going to start. Like, as of right now, like, there's probably a pretty good chance that he just comes off the bench, right? Unless they're viewing this in terms of salary, in which case, DeAndre Ayton and Jeremy Grant have to start.
I don't know what the response is. They just need a response, honestly, because you can't rely on a guy who just was inefficient literally from everywhere on the floor. It's a tough situation. I also think Denny is ready to take that step. Like, to that question earlier, is there anyone where you wouldn't draft or get a guy at a certain position because he's locked in? I think Denny's the closest to that answer as currently constructed.
Yeah, I think he has to, because we just don't know. Like, in theory, Scoot should be the answer, but he's just not yet. Like, you have,
right.
He was better last year, definitely steadier. And I'm assuming he'll continue to improve. I'm still in on Scoot, but yeah, the Denny is the closest they come to like having that primary face of the future.
And he was so good to wrap up the year. I thought we saw like a significant shift in his play style too. You know, he was very, I don't want to say stationary. That might be the wrong word. Like, he always tried to do something on the ball when he was in Washington, but it felt as though it was like more along the lines, you know, straight line drives, spot up shooting. Like he wasn't really allowed to do, to be as creative as he was in Portland. And I think the first half of the season, he sort of played Washington Wizards basketball still. He felt like, oh yeah, I still have to play within the scheme of the offense. I still have to limit myself. And then the second half of the year, oh my God, he started playing like Luka freaking Doncic. Like something just went off and he was, I got it now. If that's sustainable, that also solves the big question we've had about this team for a while now, which is, who is their main guy? Who to build around? Who is like the linchpin?
So I think there's a point where it could be sustainable because we kind of saw it during the latter half of the year in Washington when they really like kind of leaned in. He was just empowered more. So we've seen that level before to some extent. I just don't know if he's like, this sort of feels like the Larry Marketing level of star at best, to where, okay,
Oh, interesting.
like he could definitely be, not different players, let me be clear, but like he's probably not going to be the best player on the 4 seed in the Western Conference. Like that's just probably not. And by the way, that's like another name. Is there a structure where you're using Jeremy Grant's salary and then you're compensating Utah enough to get Larry Markkinen on this team? That would be like the Cam Johnson, the Larry Markkinen, the Michael Porter Jr. That feels like the best type of acquisition for this team if they're looking to elevate their offense.
I don't hate that. That's actually a pretty good Larry Markkinen team. And I don't think there are a lot out there where I'm just like, oh, this team needs Larry Markkinen. This might actually be one of them.
I guess what gets weird is just they don't really have, like, who are you giving to Utah? Like, they don't have the blue chip prospect that I'm assuming you're not going to trade Sharp or Henderson to Utah to get Lowry. And so it's all picks. And I don't know that Utah is going to be interested in that just because they have a crap ton of picks themselves. Right. This team, I will say, we called them, Grant and I, when we were doing their offseason look at the biggest wild card of the offseason. They immediately proved us right, like 36 hours later by trading for Drew Holiday. And they're still like the biggest wild card of one of the biggest wild cards of the, like Toronto's up there for sure, but this team is a huge offseason wild card, and I fave it. Yep. I kind of like the mystery box stuff that's going on here.
Agreed. It's fun. I mean, look, so I was about to say Hansen Yang. Is it because he's Chinese? Is it Yang Hansen? Like, how do we go about this? The Yao Ming situation as well. Like, he had Yao on the back of his jersey. I'm not really sure of, is it Yang Hansen or is it Hansen Yang?
Just to confess, I will sit down before I do the preseason look-aheads and like try to get the pronunciation of all the new players down. I do not have it down.
No. It's not the pronunciation. It's like which comes first.
Oh, that's what I do not know. He was announced as, wasn't he announced
as Hansen Yang?
Yeah. No. I think he was announced the other way.
Oh, Yang Hansen. I don't remember. The only thing that threw me was the Hansen part because that's a Danish name. So I was like, "What? Wait, what?" That threw me a little bit.
I thought he was introduced as Yang Hansen when they called his name, but I now I can't remember. I'm misremembering. If anyone in the chat wants to remind us how he was announced, we will greatly appreciate it.
Regardless, I mean, look, there is absolutely something interesting with a team that's unpredictable. Because it means they're probably not just being unpredictable for the fans. It also means that there are 29 other front offices that have no idea what the fuck they're doing in terms of like trying to gauge where the Blazers going, and they'll just swing on something that's just not expected. So if you call them up, you're like, I don't even know what to offer them because I have no idea what the direction is, and that's going to put the Blazers at an advantage. So it's interesting. I'm right there with you. Good call on part of you and Grant. Not surprisingly.
I thought you said surprisingly at first.
No,
Let's get into the Utah Jazz, who Ace Bailey most definitely wants to play for, reportedly, as he should, quite frankly. But neither here nor there. What's your question for them?
Oh, well, let's just get this out of the way first. Utah's not a bad destination. I mean, look, Salt Lake City is gorgeous. I've been there. As many people have alluded to, it's only like a 30-minute flight from Vegas. Most players love it there. Like initially, they're like, oh, Utah, like Salt Lake City. Then they get there, they find out that it's pretty low key. Like they can walk the streets without getting too bothered. And like, again, the Vegas point, I don't mind.
The basketball situation, if he wants to be a star, this is perfect. Like, yeah, okay, Brooklyn would have been fine too, but like, they've already walked it back. I was never worried. I give the front office kudos here for not backing off.
Same.
So shout out to them.
I will say what worries me
there. Like I think with the role they can forget about the off court stuff. Yeah, I agree with like the proximity to Vegas, California, even sure. But I think the basketball situation is going to be awesome for him. There's no guard on the team that needs to really dominate the ball. That was my question. I'm gonna hijack and go first here. Like I
Go
did the
for
last
it.
one.
Absolutely.
Do you think because they have Sexton, Clarkson, Isaiah Collier, Keontae George, Collier's the closest of any of them that comes to like a floor general type, correct? Like that's not George or Clarkson or Sexton. Those guys are not.
Am I being too optimistic if I bring in Walter Clayton Jr. here?
I guess you could. That's fair. But would you support or do you think that they should go out and maybe get a veteran who you know is going to seek out like and try and find? And it's not someone go out and spend all this money or give up all these first round picks.
No.
But get more of an experienced game manager in there to ensure that you want Ace Bailey to self create, run pick and rolls and be the engine of the offense for points, but also to get him the ball in the right spots and in spots that makes it easier for him to score.
What you're really asking me is, do I take a free agent meeting with a point guard and I sit that guy down and I tell him, look, I'm going to give you $2 million more on your contract if you agree to just spoon feed Ace Bailey throughout the next 82 games. That's what you're asking me. And yeah, I absolutely take that meeting with a point guard. Dear Tyus Jones, would you consider? Yes, absolutely. Why wouldn't I? That's a smart play. That's a real investment in a guy who has upside and where you help him along the way because he will need help. I know he fancies himself like Tracy McGrady, but even Tracy McGrady needed help. That's something that we need to acknowledge. My biggest question about Ace Bailey, though, when it comes to this is it always the best way to develop talent if the guy just gets the green light and if everyone around him is sort of tailored towards, give this guy the ball? Is this always the right way to develop in the most optimal sense? Or do you need to play within a certain set of boundaries to become a truly impactful player?
I would probably tilt more towards the latter, especially when starting out. And especially for certain, like if he was, if LaMelo Ball, Dylan Harper, if he was on this team, yes, you give him the ball and say run the show. But because that's not really Ace Bailey's game, so there's a certain archetype where I think it changes as well. So I would be with you there. And like Utah has, they have the full mid-level. They could go to a Tyus Jones and say, we will give you the one. If no one's giving you the full mid-level, we will. And we just want someone to come in here and just be an organizer, yeah.
It's got to be in your contract. 5 of your assists per game has to go to Ace Bailey.
Right. Or there's incentives for how many assists you have to Ace Bailey.
So Ace Bailey, we're gonna track your passes. So at least 40% of them has to go to Ace.
I guess the danger in thinking like that though would be, okay, well, are you cutting into the development of Keontae George or Isaiah Collier? And to my response there would be well, you could also move off of or lower the playing time of Colin Sexton or Clarkson because those are not players who factor into your bigger picture.
I actually have a question about that.
Also helps out Lauri Markkanen, who had a precipitous drop in his own efficiency last year.
I have a question about your first point there. Is it time to move Keontae George back to the 2, or do you still want to go through the experiment of turning him into a 1? And before you answer, it's something that I still not have made a decision on in my own head in terms of what I want, because I do think he's gained a lot from being so much on the ball. Remember, he came into the league as primarily an inefficient 2. And for him to get the reps at the point guard position, I think has been greatly beneficial for him. Do you think it would behoove him to remain in that role, or should we get back to unleashing him a little bit?
If you're going to continue to bring him off the bench, I think that's probably fine.
Mm.
Otherwise, it might be interesting to see him play off another floor general type.
Right. Yeah. Just as a combo, you think? I don't hate that.
Yeah, but again, what does that do with Isaiah Collier? But again, I don't think any of these guys are good enough to where you trip yourself up thinking, the priority to me, I'm not saying put his competitive livelihood over everybody else on the team, but the priority, the guy in Utah is Ace Bailey right now.
Right. Assuming he plays there. Yeah.
I think he will. I would be shocked if he doesn't. There was already reports that he was going to show up by Monday. So
look, it's not him I question, but I don't know how much you read about his supposed agent. And
I did.
Good Lord.
It just gets to a point where you not even the most. I don't know, like ignorant person in the world can like keep him like from not reporting. Like it just doesn't. You have no leverage here. Like there's no
Of
real
course you
leverage
don't.
here.
Right. I just hope he gets better guidance is probably the right word.
For sure. So, and I think also that's the thing that people probably missed throughout all this is maybe there are some actual red flags with his responses or whatever at the combine or in interviews, but like he's not the one shooting down all like this is his representation. Right. He even kind of said it at draft night, like he's like I focus on basketball, and I'm sure he's he is an adult, he's a young adult, but like he's complicit to an extent, but like you kind of forget that it's not like no, he's being steered incorrectly, and hopefully that will change in the near future. And I think him reporting by Monday, as it seems like he will show that that's, you know, at least happening to some extent.
Fingers crossed, because like you, I want a happy ending on this one for sure.
What's your question for Utah?
What should they do about Lauri Markkanen at this point? I mean, look, they did the renegotiate and extend. He's... what's the word here? Like overpaid, yes, but he's not a contract where I'm like, I'm so nervous that I won't get, you know, a significant chunk of production. Like he's not some type of debt contract here. And I think sometimes those are the most difficult contracts to gauge, right? Like you have a productive player. You have someone who can give you 20, 22, 23 points per game. He'll give you 8 rebounds. He'll give you quality shooting. But he's overpaid by probably around 5 to 10 million annually. Those contracts are so difficult because if you're the Jazz, when you shop him, obviously you're not interested in relinquishing additional assets to get off that contract. But if you're the receiving team, you're also looking at it going, yeah, I'm not going to be relinquishing a lot of contracts or a lot of assets to take on a player who's probably overpaid. How the hell do they get out of this situation if they're even interested in doing so?
I feel like the answer is pretty straightforward, and it's
okay.
You hope that he plays better this season, and then you can recalibrate either at the trade deadline or next offseason based off where you are and where you're headed as a team. And then if he doesn't, like, I just don't – you can keep holding on to him at that because you're not trying to contend right now. That money has to go somewhere. And you know what the best version of Lauri Markkanen looks like. I don't really subscribe, and I'm not saying you do either. I don't subscribe to the idea that you have to move him. Like where I've seen like, oh, if you just get 2 first-round picks for him, go. Like I guess if the Pelicans are offering unprotected first, let's have a conversation. If they're just throwing those around on the market, but they're not like unless the Jazz are trying to hit the acceleration button, and even if they are, like Lauri Markkanen would be pretty important in doing that actually.
Yep.
So. I don't think they should move him because he doesn't hurt your rebuild. Like he's like this perimeter play finisher, basically. Like you don't want him creating his own shots. And his value, it's not at its nadir, but it might be just because of the contract. And so why would you move him when it's not
That's a fair point.
Near its peak or higher than it is now?
Right. And I guess you're right in terms of if he just does not return to like his usual standard 23, 25 points, efficient offense, you can sort of live with that contract. Like you don't really have a whole lot of players that you need to take care of. Like John Collins, I actually like John Collins quite a bit, but he's not long for this roster. I'm guessing that they're going to try to pump up his value as well. And then at the trade deadline, if someone needs a big man who can produce, that's someone who a receiving team can potentially take in and then even re-sign next summer at a lesser deal, perhaps. Colin Sexton, probably the same thing. Am I worried about Jordan Clarkson whatsoever? Probably not. Not really.
You know, that's Colin Sexton's a good sort of inverse of Lauri Markkanen. That's the player you look at now. He's in the final year of his contract. You really don't have business extending him or bringing him back. That's the player if Utah had urgency, is like, okay, we need to move him or just be prepared to let him leave for nothing. Lauri Markkanen is just, if a team comes and bowls you over with an offer, he's absolutely not untouchable. I've seen a lot of like, well, they should just move him for what he could get now because that deal looks so bad. One, I don't think it's as terrible as people think. Two, if it is bad, what is it preventing Utah from doing right now? Like, this is a problem 3 years into the future, most likely, at which point he will be an expiring contract, and it's not a problem at all.
If he comes to the Jazz and says, "Look, I want to go on to a competing team. I want out of here," then that situation becomes extremely interesting.
It does and it doesn't, because I sit there and say, you got renegotiated and extended because we were buying your silence or your patience for at least 2 years. Like, I just don't think if he tries to play that card before next summer, and even then it's just they paid you when they didn't have to. And it's like he earned it. Don't get me wrong, but like that renegotiate and extend, it just felt so not like a team run. I know he's not doing the day-to-day stuff, but that did not feel like a Danny Ainge-led team at all.
No, that was a courtesy. That was a courtesy thing.
We're buying your patience or your silence.
Yeah.
So it would get interesting if he does that, but I don't. If I'm Utah, I'm like, sure, you go find the team that's going to compensate us what we want for you, and then we'll talk.
Oh God, I want that to happen. I want that to be the conversation. He comes in, sits at the table, he's sweating a little bit. He's like, and then the only answer he gets is sure.
Don't you? Honestly, there's a chance that both Ainges kind of, if he does that, they might breathe a sigh of relief, because Austin Ainge said we're not going to manipulate minutes, and then Danny Ainge probably wants to take anyway, and so then he's going to hold out, or you're just going to have to not dismiss him, but like not have him travel with the team or suspend him for conduct detrimental to the team. It doesn't. This is like, I don't think that's in Markkanen's. We haven't seen anything like that happen, but if I'm Utah, he could not pressure me enough. He could go full James Harden, and I'm like, yeah, like we're still in our rebuild. Like we're okay moving on without you, because the losses come in, the lottery odds go up.
He's finished, so it's not going to happen. It was just a theory. Well, look, okay, he didn't like.
Mort is saying he's finished, not he's finished.
Correct. Very, very much correct. Like he didn't like being at the Bulls, and he was very close to, asking out. But it's knowing him like the nationality is probably like the most polite trade request of all time. Like he comes in cap in hand, like, "Sir, I would really appreciate." Like he's not going to come in and slam his fist on the table. I don't know. It's a weird situation, I think, because he's also 28, so he's like in the prime of his career. I do think you laid out the most likely scenario, that he plays his balls off, that he rehabs his value, and then at the trade deadline in 2026, that's when you kind of reconvene. You talk about this, you figure out what works, what doesn't work. Perhaps there's a trade here.
Is there a team, though, that as of right now, or even leading into the trade deadline, let's say that you would want to see, like, given off, like, it has to be a real offer for you to consider. Is there a team that, if Larry Markkanen trade speculation is going to become a thing, that you have a team sort of circled as, well, that's like a team I'm going to keep an eye on?
We brought up the Blazers as a potential destination before. I actually don't hate that. But I don't think there are a lot of teams that are necessarily in, the Lauri Markkanen archetype business anymore. We're talking about how size has returned to the NBA. Great. Theoretically, Lauri counts as that, but does he really? Because that size comes with a certain level of expectation defensively, rebounding wise. Like, he'll give you the scoring, he'll give you the floor spacing. Is he someone you want starting at the 3 full time? Personally, I don't think that. It's not something I'm like a big fan of, at least not yet. He's a weird archetype, is kind of what I'm saying. He's not someone who's easy to build something around. Like, he has to come in and be sort of a complementary player, but a complementary player at $46 million.
Yeah, that's you need him to fit into your salary structure.
Right.
I would say no better than your second best player, and even that could technically be a stretch. You might want him to be more like your third.
Denver?
Ooh. Wow. But that would be, so it's Michael Porter Jr., I guess Peyton Watson, and then a first-round pick and a swap. Is that enough? Like, and there's other money included in there. Is that enough? I don't know if that's enough. Like, I just don't. I don't
it might be
Utah to bite.
But like,
Larry
okay, from
Markkanen's value right now, maybe I can't see Utah accepting that offer. What about Detroit? Maybe get a flyer on Jaden Ivey, picks, and Tobias Harris is expiring.
Why are so many people interested in breaking up the Cade Jaden thing so soon when they've been like interchangeably injured and not really played a whole lot together?
I don't think their minutes together have been all that effective. I think Jaden Ivey got better. I don't think it's the right fit for the roster.
But we haven't seen them together long term with this version of Cade, though. Cade got so much better this year. We saw only 30 games out of Jaden.
I'm not saying you should actively be looking to move Jaden Ivey for anything, but if Larry Markkanen's on the table, I would
You
consider
would?
moving Jaden Ivey. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't. But like again, Jaden is one of my guys. Like he's one of those players who I like. He's my Tumani Kamara.
That's interesting because Tamani Kamara's like been really good though. Is the difference?
You're such a dick.
Do you want to talk some Masai Ujiri Toronto Raptors really quickly?
Yeah. I mean, you have the graphic up, so like I'm pretty much forced to, right?
Correct.
It'd be super awkward if I said no.
He's out in Toronto. It clearly wasn't mutual. I know the Raptors tried to frame it as that. It feels more like a cost/power thing from MLSE's play. They'll raise the ticket prices. Don't they have like in charge of cable or whatever in Canada? They'll raise those prices but trim the operating costs for them. What do you read into this?
Well, first things first. Let's get the optics out of the way first, right? He was always on his last legs for like this is something we've heard about for a while. Like he was on the hot seat. That's been a thing for what, a year, maybe even longer now. So this isn't surprising whatsoever. But for the Raptors to do this a day after the completion of the draft, that is just it's the worst.
Are funny. It's not everyone's going to be like, oh, it's because he took Colin Murray Boyles. And that's not how this worked.
No,
sure, but it's just you're right. They opened themselves up to that, those types of optics.
Exactly. It was Bobby Webster making these decisions, not Masai. So I'm just looking at this going, you know what? Why put this on yourself? Like, because this is going to be a story for at least a couple of years where people will talk about, remember how you did this and this was totally avoidable. It's just sometimes NBA organizations, they make the most obvious dumbass mistakes, and you just kind of sit there and go, how do you not read the tea leaves on this one? But my overarching point here is this was not a shock. So what you're really asking me here is like, what do I make of this situation? I make of it that it was inevitable.
I mean, these types of things are always inevitable if you want to go down that road. I just don't, the comments made during the presser after the fact were just sort of uninspiring, and it kind of, Katie Heindel had like kind of provided her thoughts, and I thought they were spot on, where it kind of feels like they just made this change for change's sake and that they don't have a plan in place. That's not to say you need to have another name lined up. I got myself into trouble saying that, and I was wrong about the Knicks' head coaching search. I walked it back. I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. That was ill-conceived. It doesn't seem like they have a vision for what, and it's just the optics are bad of the timing around it. But now what are you doing? They brought up, I think, unprompted, the luxury tax is like a no-no for this team, that's kind of troubling. So are you still trying to accelerate the timeline? Do we expect Brandon Ingram to all of a sudden be on the trade market now? There was a sentiment out there that maybe Jakob Poeltl would get an extension. Is he now on the chopping block? I think they were already pretty confusing. And Masai, of course, and Bobby Webster all had a hand in that. But there was it felt what they were trying to do was clear, was that they were trying to take a big step forward this season. And did they have the right pieces in place to do that? Debatable, of course. It just feels like there was a level of, I don't know. I can't really describe it, but what they have right now just feels so empty. After just reading those comments from the press conference I'm not saying you need to have a replacement lined up, but it just doesn't feel like this team has a vision. And when you are this expensive, they're not prohibitively expensive, but when you have so many guys who are kind of in their primes, you're not, Scotty Barnes is still developing, but all the other core players on this team, and RJ Barrett, a Brandon Ingram, a Jakob Poeltl, they're in Emmanuel Quickly, they're entering or they're in or they're exiting their prime. So it's just, I know Masai has caught a lot of shit. Just he is the lead executive, and so even if it was Bobby Webster making the OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam trades, you're going to be the fall guy if you don't think those worked out. But it almost felt like it was a mandate that they needed to get better, like the OG Anunoby return specifically. And yeah, maybe they waited too long to trade those guys, but just they weren't working with the most ideal circumstances after their 2019 title either. And so I'm just not as quick to be like, oh, like Masai was really fucking up here as a lot of other people. And maybe there were just certain, like, did he promise to get Kevin Durant or deliver a star by draft night or something and didn't? I don't know. I'm not saying that he has done or that this front office has done the best job, but I think that they have been creative, taken opportunistic swings, and I don't know. I don't look at the Raptors situation as necessarily aimless or undesirable. I certainly consider it a little bit aimless now, though, that he's not in charge.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think he did fine for the most part in the last couple of years. Like the Ingram trade, whether he made that or not, presumably he did not. That one was.
He had to give it okay. Like he's involved.
Yeah,
are we
probably
trading? Are we giving him an extension? It's just,
right.
Yeah, I don't.
That I didn't like. So I do. I think a quality team president / general manager, it's executive, has now landed on the market. I think there are at least 5 teams in the NBA right now who should fire their lead executive and go like try to lock him up. Like, well, probably lock him up and then fire your executive. But like, are you going to tell me the rudderless Chicago Bulls couldn't use someone like him? Absolutely. The Pelicans, even though they just hired Joe Dumars.
Sorry, sir.
I know. I mean, just generally speaking, right? He would be an upgrade on several teams.
I would fire the Knicks front office right now and put Masai Ujiri. And the Knicks front office hasn't even done a bad job. Like, that's my opinion of Masai Ujiri.
Yeah. I think, same. By the way, would it be the most weird acquisition and like timeline of a player ever if Brandon Ingram is traded this summer, having never suited up for the Raptors and yet still got an extension?
You know, it would be similar to, and not exactly because he did suit up for this team, but like what the Pacers did with Bruce Brown.
Yeah.
When they flipped him in the Pascal Siakam. It would be that, except it just timed it. He was injured when they did it, so he never actually played for them.
But like still, right? We would look back at a Brandon Ingram career where he got a $120 million extension, having never played for the team that actually signed him to it. That I don't think that's ever happened in NBA history. So now, obviously, because I just laid it out like that, now I want it to happen, just for the sheer shenanigans of it all.
I mean, I would think it's on the table now. I honestly don't know what the direction here is. Like, what was
right.
Masai not doing that would have compelled them to push him out? That's like, this feels like a firing. He had 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah.
They framed it as a mutual parting of the ways. I really don't think that's what it was.
He was fired. Yep.
So I'm just curious. It's like, so what were you looking for? Did you want to get cheaper? Did you want to be rebuilding? And if you wanted to get cheaper or rebuilding, you let this, let's just loop it, the front office. You let them like make too many moves then. Like it should have been, you should have intervened, and I wouldn't have supported it, so to speak. But this just feels, for the point that they're at, it feels unnecessarily meddlesome. And if it really comes down to he wanted too much power or money in his next deal, I don't know if that's more or less understandable, quite frankly.
And the worst part is, you and I, we love Colin Murray Boyles, if memory serves, right? I think
I don't love him on this team, but yes, we love Colin Murray Boyles.
That's the thing. I wrote about this over at Yahoo as well. I said, love the player. That might, and I think I pegged this dude as just being, plug and play virtually everywhere. The virtually did a lot of heavy lifting there because now he's on Toronto, and that's like the worst possible situation because where are those minutes going to come by? Like, Brandon Ingram is not a natural 2. Let's just be real. He's more of a 3-4. Oh, the same is true about Scotty Barnes. RJ Barrett tried the 2 in New York, didn't really set the world on fire, became like a fully fledged forward with the Raptors, started expanding his game all of a sudden. So you know what? He's a 3-4 too. So you have 3 guys all playing like small forward, power forward. You can try to get away with playing Colin Murray Boyles as a small ball center here and there, but like presumably or preferably, rather, you want him playing the 4. Where are those minutes going to come by if they're already taken by Barnes, Ingram, and Barrett? It's just, something's got to give here. I don't think they are interested in pivoting off Brandon Ingram because I think the optics of doing that when he's never suited up for him is super bad. So I think RJ Barrett.
Is it relative to what they gave up? For, like,
no,
what if Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Again, no. I agree with you. I like for us sickos, we would be like, that's the smart thing to do. The casual fan, try to sell this to the casual fan.
Okay, but do they care about optics when they just got rid of Masai Ujiri the day after the draft?
There are two answers to that. Maybe they are well aware of that and just went fuck it and did it anyway. So maybe not. I mean, I don't know. I'm just like I would trade Brandon Ingram too. But I'm guessing that they're trying to find a middle ground with RJ Barrett.
Yeah, I'm not even advocating for them to trade anyone necessarily. I just think that they didn't even really give whatever vision this front office was trying to put in place a chance to fully play out, which is why this decision to me is, I think it's curious and is also concerning, but we'll have to see what happens from here. And they're another, similar with the Blazers, they now feel more than ever like one of the bigger wild cards of the offseason. Mort, you got anything else, or can you tell our listeners, watchers, subscribers where they can find you and all the work that you did?
Well, you can find my work over at Yahoo Sports. You can find it at Forbes. You can find it at the NBA podcast. And then if you speak Danish on the off chance, you can find my work over at Buster Peter.
Until next time, and as always, we with the shout out to the one, the only. We'll plug here. We'll be back on Saturday to do what's the final division we have? Central. So we'll get to talk about the Bulls and the Bucks and other teams in the Central, which also include the Pacers. Sad face. That's kind of a bummer. Until next time, so come check us out then. But until next time, and as always, we give a shout out to the one, the only, the indelible. He can fix every single issue in Toronto if they just sign him and give him the keys as both the player and lead executive to the franchise, Mr. Frank Ntilikina.